Okay, welcome to spring semester. This class is Constitutional Law, POL 66. It is a synchronous class, which means we have required meetings every Wednesday at 11:30 to 1 p.m., and those will be available over Zoom. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you. It'd be pleasant if you turn your cameras on, but if you're shy, at the very least, if you could put up some kind of a picture, just so I know I'm talking to a human being and not a robot. In this presentation, I'm going to go over just some of the basics of the course, and I call this a syllabus overview. And then there'll be an assignment that you need to complete based on this video. So I'll try to move quickly, but there is a lot to cover. So the basics of the syllabus, and you might find most of this information to be new to you, or it might be consistent with some information you've gotten from your other classes. Either way, I kind of put the most important things on the first page of the syllabus, which provides the details, the information of the course, a link to the course website. You can also access all the same materials on Blackboard, a reminder that we have required meetings on Wednesday at 11:30. And my email information, as well as the office hour information. And I wanted to highlight just a few things here. In this class, we do a socio-legal analysis of constitutional law. That's consistent with the behavioral sciences department that this class is housed in. It's also consistent with the criminal justice field of study that takes a more sociological point of view. And it's also, if you give it a chance, tends to be easier for students than it otherwise would be, let's say, if you were in a law school. So in specific, you're going to think a lot about how identities are constituted. There's that word constituted in constitutional law. And to start to think about how there are differences among these interpretations and why that leads to some people feeling that there needs to be resistance and social change. And so one person you can check out if this is interesting to you is a woman named Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a legal scholar. She's written on civil rights, critical race theory, which is the big bad buzzword these days. But don't worry, people will forget about it in a few years, and then they'll be reminded of it again. It's not the first time that critical race theory has been controversial. I've been studying the theory for now close to 20 years, and you will find it is not quite as controversial as the news makes it out to be. But it does come from a positionality, and so Kimberly Crenshaw was one of the pioneers of this field, and she's a Black feminist legal scholar, and has talked a lot about racism in the law. And so you'll find this to be a guiding principle in this class, and just on a very blunt basis, even the most conservative legal historians will tell you that you can't understand constitutional law without understanding the context of slavery and that as an economic system at the founding of this country. And so it's really one of those things that you really have to try to wrap your head around, and I try to do that the best I can. And one of the ways I do that is I put together a textbook for you that pulls in a lot of different readings and then brings a context around the cases so you can better make sense of those. And that's called the Law and Identity Reader. It's available by Conella, and it ranges in price from $65 on the ebook up to, I think, $80 if you want to get it in print. And then they've got a variety of options in between that. You can also reach out to me if you need help figuring out the textbook, and if you need ways of trying to pay for it. There are emergency funds available through the college, and also ASAP offers a textbook voucher, so be sure to utilize that if you're a part of ASAP. So I also want to provide an equity statement so that you understand kind of the principles that I go by and maybe why I take this particular approach to teaching this class. The most fundamental, or the simplest way of explaining this, is that lawyers, judges, and law enforcement officers have often used legal justifications for the abuse of power, particularly against Black and Indigenous populations throughout the history of the United States. There are so many examples of this that you would need. You could spend your entire career studying all of these examples. We will touch on a handful of them that are representative to show you kind of the larger problems that American society faces and the role that the law has really played in that. And then, as someone who is white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant man, I have benefited a great deal from institutional and ideological biases that encourage folks in positions of authority and everyday people to give me privilege and to give me the benefit of the doubt and assistance based on these shared norms. These are things I'm happy to talk about with you one-on-one, or they may come up in our class discussions, just to help everybody understand that this is not simply about individuals having bad motives or them being bad people, but that the society actually structures relationships in a way that tend to provide the favor or the benefit of the doubt to people who look like me and who understand those kind of underlying unwritten rules. And so for those of you who are wanting to think about law in equitable terms or as a tool for equity, it really has to address those biases. So in response, I've spent over 20 years working to uncover my own biases, lots of self-reflection, and to interrogate and navigate through the ideas of the system, but also the structures and the processes of the system, and to really interrogate and examine those that promote exclusions and recreate or reproduce ideological superiorities or these myths of superiority, and then to consider what I can do with others to go ahead and reduce the harms caused by such a system. And some authors have called this anti-racism, and I'd be in agreement with that. Now on to the thing that most students want to know about as soon as possible is the grading. You will find that there's a feature in Blackboard called My Grades. Please understand that I can't really see that. This is what I see. I see the general shell of it. And this is a good way to have a feeling of how you're doing. Many of you asked that kind of a question. So this is one way. But as you'll see, what I deal with are the percentages. And so that's not something that can really be done well in Blackboard in my experience. And so your final grade will be based on what I have. Again, the Blackboard grading book is pretty accurate. It gives you a pretty good sense, but that's only if you really kind of understand the percentages. And so I provide lots of opportunities here for you to boost your grade. One of them is in extra credit events that will be offered to you. Usually those are Zoom or, if possible, in person. And then another is an extra credit workbook, which has embedded assignments along it. So you kind of just complete it, and then you complete the assignment, and then you'll get extra credit that way. But those will be countered in at the final grade. And that will be used up to a 10% boost based on the quality of your work and how much of it you do. You'll have some discussion board posts. Those are 15%. Each of those will be graded on a scale of 10. So a 7, if you see a 7 there, that would be equivalent to a C. An 8 would be a B. A 9 would be an A-, and a 10 would be an A+. And then those will be averaged out to equal your 15% total contribution to your grade at the end of the semester. The Google Form assignments, there'll be several of those, and those will be graded based on the thoughtfulness and timeliness of your work. And I'll update that grade periodically throughout the semester. So you might see it's an A one week, and then it drops down to a B. That'll be based on, again, the quality of your work. The midterm exam is pretty straightforward. There's a grading rubric that you'll have. It's a long essay kind of a exam, so you'll have some reading to do, and then you'll apply the learning that you've learned in weeks 1 through 3. And again, you'll have a rubric that gives you an idea. That's worth 25% of your grade, so a pretty big chunk, and that will give you an idea of how well are you actually applying the learning in the class. You'll have a paper which will be broken down into a draft and then a final paper with revisions, each worth 15%, and you'll get it the first round in your draft. You'll get a grade of you've completed it, you've done exactly what I asked you to do, and that's worth 15 points. Almost there means that you had some good ideas, but maybe you borrowed some things on the internet and you got to change that, or it needs serious revision. Maybe you borrowed everything from the internet and you definitely need to change that, or maybe there's some real problems. You didn't quite follow the instructions correctly. The final paper with revisions will also have a grading rubric, but I'll provide that to you based on what I get from you all. I want to, as much as possible, be responsive to how you're understanding the material and to grade you as fairly as possible, and to help you kind of guide your way through that process. And then finally, I've decided I want to give a nice big chunk of the grade, 20%, to participation. So you'll obviously be rewarded for attending and participating in the discussions each week. So I really want to emphasize that if you show up and then if you are regularly engaged, that you'll get a big boost in your grade. Again, you have to be regularly engaged. So that's not just showing up, having your camera off and saying nothing, right? You won't get any credit for that. If you're shy, we can work on ways of helping you to not be so shy. And there's lots of feedback that I can give you. There are ways to boost your participation grade, so please do reach out to me if you need to do that. But I think that the strongest way to do it will be to participate in the weekly meetings. Now, I use some different language for assignments, and so I want to make sure you're clear about that. First of all, we don't learn one way, and so there are multiple learning styles. So I want to give as many opportunities to people to evidence that you're learning through the learning style that's most appropriate for you. So if you see the word assignment, this is usually a Google form, and this really will also affect your attendance and participation grade. So if you're doing those assignments regularly, it shows me that you're engaged in the class, and I'll boost your participation grade. If it says read, I'm really, this is like one of those things where you need to do it, you should do it, and you really should stick to the suggested due dates. But if you get behind, make sure you catch up again with the readings, and really make sure you're taking notes, that you're not just rushing through the readings. They're very important for you to understand the concepts in the class. If it says examine, it's usually because it's a website, and so I want you to take your time. You're going to explore it and find all the different pieces of the website, and I'm really trying to get you into a process of exploration, or what I sometimes call a curiosity quest, to help you find information on your own so that you find legitimate academic sources to help you think deeper. If it says respond, this means I want you to critically think, and then I want you to apply the learning that you've had thus far. So I'll give you a prompt, and then you're supposed to respond to it. Again, the extra credit is really about enrichment, or I can also design extra credit if you're feeling like you don't understand something. I can design something specific for you, and I'll call that an intervention. In both cases, this is you applying your learning. A review and exercise is kind of like practicing for coursework, so you'll see that in the extra credit workbook. Those aren't things that you churn in. These are things that I think are helpful, and students have let me know that these are helpful. If maybe you didn't learn about some things in previous classes, this gets you kind of caught up. If I say watch, right, this is almost always a YouTube video, you should definitely take notes during those videos. I referred a lot to them. Students request them. If you request particular videos on certain subjects, I can make those and post them and share them, but you definitely want to take notes on those. Join will be those weekly discussions. You should be asking questions, you should be getting a context, or sometimes I'll give you a topic like a lecture, which will probably be pretty short, less than 20 minutes, and then we'll have a nice discussion so that I understand that you're making sense of all this material. Again, you know what the participation is, but we'll have discussion boards, the Zooms, activities, and that you're actively engaged. It shows me that you're actually a part of this process. Again, I ask for a lot of feedback, so if something isn't working for you, we can find something for you. So that's another way of participating. Again, review and use is a little bit different, but sometimes I'll give you study habits. There's going to be a writing workshop. I might provide like a table that helps you kind of keep things organized. It'll, again, just depend on how you're all doing. Now, the exams are ways of you showing me that you're thinking deeply and that you're getting the content. And so this is not multiple choice. This is not you're able to read something in a book and then collect the right answer online. This is a way for me to see, are you actually getting the concepts in this class, so that I feel better about the fact that someone's paying for this course. And then finally, the draft and the final paper is really a way for you to practice college work that's going to be expected of you as you go on forward. So I'm not really going to judge you harshly there. I'm going to try to help you so that you get better and better at writing these kind of papers. This is an upper level class, and so I have the duty to help you with this before you transfer, for those of you who are transferring. But it's also a good way for me to see that you're applying the learning. You can really, I really want to see your work, your opinions, your thoughts, and that you're deeply reflecting on what you've learned so far. And writing is obviously a very good way for you to do that. So again, I don't want you to focus so much on what you think the paper is supposed to look like. I'd like you to think about how are you expressing your thoughts, which means that you should speak in your language. I want to be clear about that. Google Translate allows me the opportunity, if you can't, if you're thinking, oh, this word just doesn't work, but I speak another language and I know what I'm trying to say in that, by all means include that language. I can look it up on Google Translate. If there's an issue, we can always talk about what is the concept that you're trying to convey. In other words, the ability to speak more than one language is an asset in my class. It's something that I think is important, and it will help you really understand the differences between law and culture. Also, if you speak in a more comfortable way, that you would with your family and friends, absolutely do that as well. I know more about this than you might guess. And so I think this is a form of linguistic justice, is that there's not really one way to speak. We all speak different ways with different people all the time. If you pay attention to pop culture or sports, right, you see there's lots of mixing and code meshing going on. And so I want to encourage you to do that as well. Now in Blackboard, most of you are probably really familiar with that by now. So the things I use the most, if you're not familiar, right, these are the things I use the most. The course content will be broken down week by week. I'll try to keep everything in order so that you're kind of keep working through it. I use the announcements quite a bit. You should check and make sure that you're keeping up to date with those announcements. I think you should check in every day, at least during the week. And try to make sure that you're not missing anything. The discussion board will have a few discussion boards. This is where I really want you to engage with each other, and so I look at these for quality and that you're really thinking deeply about the concepts. And again, I mentioned that the grade book as well. Now, I also, like I mentioned, there's the extra credit workbook, and so I just pulled a few screenshots from that. So one is just to help you understand why I'm doing it. It's something that I think students have needed for a long time, and I got the chance to work on it last year. And so far, it's been very helpful. Students have done really well when they use it. I also have included a bunch of vocabulary. I'll probably spend a lot of time on that this semester, just to help you work through that. You might have not known that there were particular words that have different meanings in law than they do in your everyday life. And so one is not right or wrong. You just need to understand how they're differently used in different situations. I also provide questions, and then you can jot down the answers. It is a workbook that you could download, so you could print it out and write out the answers. It is also on Adobe, so you could type your answers in there if you wanted to, I think as comments. But most importantly, I think for those of you who want extra credit as you're working through this, is that you'll see there's click here to complete the extra Google form assignment, which will show me that you're understanding the concepts in the workbook. That's where you get your extra credit from. There are a number of supports that I have made available in the syllabus. So if you see the table in the syllabus, each of those underlined words are hyperlinks. So if you need something with, say, immigration law, then you click that link, it'll take you to that office. If you're looking for public benefits, there's a link to that takes you to those resources. For student life or the student union events, you can take that, criminal justice, etc. Reach out to me if you need me to help you, guide you through this. It's always difficult when you're trying to get into an institutional bureaucracy like college. My goal is for everyone to do as well as possible. I think these supports help. When I was in college, I definitely utilized these supports when I knew they existed, and that's why I'm trying to make that available to you as well. I don't think I want to spend a lot of time talking about this. Don't steal from the internet. I usually will give you a warning. It's exceedingly obvious when you do it. We know it happens as faculty members, but we have options. And so some faculty are really harsh and they can throw you out of college, to be blunt. Others are very lenient. They just look the other way, and I don't think they're doing you any favors there. The college administration is paying a lot of attention to this. They're very concerned about it. So I just want you to be careful. You do have rights. So if you're accused of cheating, or if you're accused specifically of copying and pasting things from the internet, you are guilty, right? You know you're guilty, but I would, this is a law class, so I feel like you do have rights though, right? They can't just throw you out of college without a process. So there are ways of defending yourself, and so you should look up the academic integrity statement. But in general, don't do it, right? Give your answers from the heart, from your brain, and don't copy and paste. One other note is the reason I can see these answers so clearly when you submit them is that they are totally wrong. There's a reason why they're available online for free. You get what you pay for, and since you're not paying anything, you're getting nothing. So you're getting some person's idea of what they think the answer is, which if they don't take the class, you can imagine that they're not real good at that. So just that's my word of wisdom. Most of you won't cheat, so moving along, weekly assignments, these need to be done the week they are assigned, right? I get that question all the time. To me, it's a strange question, right? You have work that you need to do that week, you got to get it done. I think what you mean to ask when you ask that is, what happens if I submit late work? Well, I can't give you full credit for a number of reasons, right? You're going to get further behind, and you're not going to get timely feedback. So I'm going to give you credit, you're getting credit for it, but it's not going to be as good as if you submitted it on time. So I'm not going to punish you, right? It's not turning into a 0, but you have to be very patient with me if you're submitting late work, because I have to get to everybody else before I can get to you. You're just creating a larger burden for me and really for the rest of the class. So if you fall behind, you got to let me know as quickly as possible so we can set something up for you that works for your schedule. Sometimes you get in over your head. I totally understand that. So let's work together to try to make that work for you. Now, week 1 has quite a bit of work in it, but it's pretty low intense work, right? It's not big, deep thinking work. So you're going to watch this video, then you're going to fill out the syllabus review assignment. That's pretty quick. You're going to read an introduction that's going to be provided to you on Blackboard in the form of a PDF. That's a fair reading, right? But I don't need you to memorize that reading. I just need you to get introduced to these concepts. I think that's one you're going to want to come back to quite often, just to help you remember what's the context for this course. What is socio-legal reasoning? Then there's a video I'd like you to watch. It's about 25 minutes. So that's not, you can take some notes, but really just pay attention. I want you to think about the structures that produce inequality. We're going to be examining the issue of homelessness and evictions and rents. And so there's also a website that you're going to look at how the city is segregated, and that will help you better understand where injustice occurs and why. And then there's an assignment that allows you to show me that you're actively engaged in this process. And then obviously we'll have our first class discussion on the Wednesday of that week. And I'm really going to just start with, how can I help you? What are things that we can work on together to try to get this semester started off on the right foot? I just want to highlight for those of you who like to know what's going on ahead of time, right? In week 4 is when you're going to have your midterm exam. It's a little earlier than you'll have in your other classes, I think. There'll be a grading rubric on Blackboard that will tell you what you need to look out for. Main thing is you need to apply your material. So this is like, don't just take the exam without citing to the readings, right? Really cite to the websites, whatever kind of information that you're sticking in your head and you want to be able to pull from your notes and then put on the exam. That's really what I'm looking for. So make sure that in the first 3 weeks you're taking good notes and that you're asking good questions. And then there will be extra credit activities that week 4. So just in case you're hyperventilating about the midterm exam, definitely get involved in the extra credit events. There'll be 2 of them that are extremely relevant to this class and on the topic of unhomelessness and rights. Now, also just in the spirit of letting you know, right, spring break is April 15th to the 24th, according to the college website. If you're interested in doing an honors contract, you must have started that contract, filled out all the appropriate paperwork, and you must have had at least 1 check-in meeting with me, meaning that you have shown me that you're doing some work along the lines of these honors contract. I do this because I get asked about honors contract every semester by 5-10 students, and one of them actually completes it. So this semester, if you're going to do the work, you need to have done some of it before spring break. If you haven't done it by the end of spring break, I'm not going to sign your honors contract at the end. Reach out to me if you're behind at this point so that we can figure out how to catch you up. We can meet if necessary online, either the week right after spring break or towards the end of spring break, and we can help figure out what it is we can do to help you catch up. The paper, again, just to remind you, this is a big portion of your grade, but there won't be a final exam, so this is replacing that. You'll have a draft, you'll revise it, and then you'll submit your final. This is really going to happen between the weeks of 8, 9, and 10, so you've got time, and I'm going to be engaged in this process with you. The main thing is to show me you can do critical thinking. through analysis, and that you're going to be using the sociological perspective that I've been teaching you all semester. You're going to have lots of support, and you'll have lots of time in the second half of this course. So really focus on understanding the concepts in the first half, and then you're going to apply those concepts in the second time. And the main thing here is to show me that you've deepened your understanding and that your positions have changed, that you're learning things, and that you're able to apply the materials. I probably said that about 10 times, and that's the key. Apply, apply, apply. So the final preparation learning outcomes, you need to show me that you're able to understand these concepts. The property first constitutional narratives reinforce social exclusion based on race, gender, and class. That's called intersectional analysis. We're going to be breaking that down through the readings. And so I'll be, again, providing lots of resources, but you have to show me you understand this through your application on your final paper. You're going to be using the example or the case study of homelessness. And so there's kind of a formula here that activist Rob Robinson has shared. He's also going to be one of the extra credit activities if you can make that. His formula is racial capitalism plus gentrification plus displacement plus criminalization. That's all in the class. You're going to be studying different components of that. It's also in your kind of things that you learned hopefully in other classes in criminal justice if that's your major. But this is kind of just, I'm getting this into your brain now so you kind of see it that way as we go through the class. This is true of multiple issues, not just homelessness, healthcare, housing in general, and there are lots of other issues we could get into later in the semester. And then finally, that legal narratives describe a double-edged sword. That's a metaphor we're going to use quite a bit that you start to understand what that means. It reinforces domination, but it also provokes resistance. And so you need to understand why there's this tension in the system. That obviously links back to number 1 and 2, but you'll know that better at the end of the semester. And then finally, me in a nutshell, I'm the first in my family to go to college, so many of you are also the first in your family to go to college. I know what that's like. I know how confusing that can be. So please do reach out to me if you had questions. I probably had a million questions when I first went to college that never got answered, and I think I would have had a much better experience if I kind of knew the answers to those questions. My background is kind of unusual. I worked in political campaigns for a while, and then I worked in civic education, working with high school students, with elementary school students. I worked on American Indian reservations, all of that before I went to law school. At law school, I was really interested in children's rights and really from a comparative international law and human rights perspective, and so that's what I focused on, as well as there's a lot of issues that come up in international law, so those tend to be corporate, big kind of picture issues, economics and trade, war and peace, if you're paying attention to the news now, environmental issues. And so those are kind of my core interests. But obviously, what I excelled at and what I was good at was legal writing and research. So even when I was working in law firms, this is what they had me spend most of my time doing, writing case briefs, help drafting opinions for interrogatories, all these kind of work that lawyers do that you'll learn about in this class. And that has led me to become a socio-legal scholar. So I'm interested in how law works in real life, not just how it reads in a long, big textbook. And then I'm a culture responsive educator, and I can provide a lot of information about that. But in essence is that I think there are multiple ways of learning, and the best approach is to include you and to learn more about your cultural point of view, and not to just base everything on my cultural point of view. So I have a number of activities and readings and options for you based on what you're interested in. I think that's also a very important aspect of education. I have a website, jleggett.commons.gc.cuny.edu, which is also similar to your course website, which is jasonmleggett.commonsgc.cuny.edu. There's also a YouTube channel, which I'll have lectures and materials for this class, but there's also for previous classes. It's not bad to watch those other videos. It gives you kind of more ideas. I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to best organize those. And so, feedback from you is always accepted. Let me know what I can do to be a better YouTuber. I've also got an Instagram account, which is usually mostly nonsense. Pictures of my dog, random things I see outside, some guitar videos. I think that's about it. Every once in a while, I'll do some propaganda for trying to promote myself, but I'm not very good at that. So if you're interested in learning more about me, right, that's Instagram's the place to go. Or if you want to talk to me, right, reach out and we can have a conversation. I enjoy helping people sort out what they want to do for their careers, what they want to do for transfer applications, honors, projects, also how you can do civic engagement projects in your neighborhood. All of these things are super interesting to me. And again, largely because of my experience in college, I want to be there as a resource for others. So hopefully this has been helpful, and don't forget to complete the syllabus review assignment.